Tonight, once again, we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger, has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Bryan Kohberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latest gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Philip J. Fry, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show. We were here just yesterday. Blue looks like he's out raving somewhere. How's it going, Blue?
Good, man. I'm trying to set up my lights because my light was unplugged, so I was trying to see why it wasn't working. So,
got you. Well, welcome everybody to the show. I appreciate everybody tuning in, everybody being here. If you're here for the first time, I would hope you consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. We have content that comes out multiple times a week. A lot of it is on the Bryan Kohberger case. We've also been talking about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, former president. And I mean, those are kind of the things that we've been talking about. And, we also kind of dabble a little bit into the paranormal every now and then, which we might probably do something like that at the end of the week. But with that being said, we got a little bit of news yesterday, so to speak. There was a release of documents, a lot of documents, 319 documents to be exact, referencing Bryan Kohberger and the upcoming hearing for change of venue. So, Big Blue, did you hear about this?
I mean, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but I have not read any of the documents yet.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll go through it. I've gone through probably about 200, maybe even a little bit more than that, of the actual document that they've had, the pages. Fortunately for me, a lot of it was like repeat stuff, or I think there was like 80 pages or somewhere around there of press releases that we've already seen. So it wasn't, anything too crazy. But let's start off with what is out in the public as far as news goes. It says Bryan Kohberger, the man charged with the murders of the 4 University of Idaho students, has asked the judge to move his trial, arguing that it is impossible for him to get a fair trial in Latah County. Big Blue, do you think that, I understand what the defense is saying here, but do you think that they would have a higher chance of them really finding people who aren't aware of this outside or, inside of the state of Idaho? It's a pretty popular case that is not just to Moscow or Idaho. It's all over the world.
Yeah, but I think once you go past that county, you'll hear less of it. You probably hear more of it there because of the issues that they're going through. It's like, when the hotels book out, I'm pretty sure there's flyers go out, and they all know it's because of the case, and there's something coming up, a court hearing. Mm-hmm. I think and then I'm pretty sure the sometimes the local news, or maybe they don't have a big news station there, but I think maybe the college is still maybe running their little special news reports on it. I know they were keeping an eye on it too, so we'll see.
Yeah. So this goes on to say the profile media coverage in Latah County is not a mere passing story. The content is not benign. Rather, it is inflammatory, emotionally evoking, and often misleading, false, and poorly sourced. There is no reasonable belief that the media coverage will slow regardless of how long the case takes to prepare for trial. So the fact that they talk about how long this takes for trial to happen, and they're talking about, media coverage and the possibility of it slowing down, does that kind of give you an idea that maybe perhaps that's one of the reasons they've been stalling in hopes that some of this media coverage would die down?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're trying to push it as far back as they can for the media coverage to die down. And I think eventually it will. I mean, there's other big stuff going on right now that, that I think their minds and their thoughts are getting directed somewhere else right now. The locals. Right now we're going into the election coming in November, so there's a lot of people trying to, getting all the reports on all the stuff that's been going on.
Right. And she goes on to say about given a level of bias in Lane Talk County, Mr. Kohberger cannot receive a fair trial. With all the evidence that is out there, I will say it does make it very difficult for anybody logically, or they can think logically, to not put those or connect those dots together that this incident more than likely was created or was caused by Bryan Kohberger. Right now, obviously, there's some possible things that could come awry. You know what I'm saying? During court from the defense team that could change the minds of this or that. But when you look down at the probable cause affidavit and how much information that was put in there, it makes it very difficult for it to really be anybody else. I mean, they talk about his phone being off during a specific time of the murders. He really doesn't even have an alibi up to now, referencing that. Then, they talk about the DNA on the knife sheath underneath the body of a victim inside of the house that he claims he has no relation to anybody in that house or have ever been in the house. And then, you have the vehicle that's seen outside that matches the description of his. And just the mere fact that he's saying, well, I want to know what you have before I tell you where I was, kind of tells you he's lying, or he's intending to lie. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to connect those two dots. Because if you're telling the truth and somebody's asking where you were, what difference does it make what the prosecution has? If you're telling the truth, it should line up. You know what I mean? Like does the defense, the prosecution turn over something to the defense and the defense be like, oh, you know what? Our truth has changed. Do you expect that to happen and it be real? Come on now. So I get it. It's going to be hard for this guy to get a fair trial. I know there's a lot of people who think, I've seen it in my comment section. Does anybody really think that he actually did this? And my thought is when you hang out with like-minded people, you're just going to hear like-minded things. Out here in Texas, there's a lot of people that think the Cowboys are going to do something every year. And they all hang out together. And unfortunately, or fortunately for me, it just doesn't happen for them as a Steelers fan. I just want to throw in that little dig there. But at the end of the day, the evidence is pretty strong. And it's just coming out of the probable cause affidavit. You don't have to add anything more to it, to be honest with you. There's all the stuff that's come out, the Tappa Talk or whatever, where he wrote down his emotions and his feelings or the lack thereof. And, the information about him, losing his job as a security guard, having to be forced to resign. Then you have the, being fired as a TA, teacher's assistant at WSU, and the information that comes around that surrounds that incident or those incidents that led to his termination. Yeah, I get it. It could be difficult, but at the same time, as Americans, we have the right, for news. We have the right to watch the news. The news has a right to broadcast things and for us to take it in and have our own opinion. We have a right to have our own opinion, and that's one of the things that I really disliked about this affidavit. It's like the defense here wants to control what you see, wants to control what you think, wants to control what you say. And it sounds kind of a lot like our current administration, to be honest with you, but I'll leave that at that. I don't know. Blue, what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I think it's a tactic that all lawyers try to do. They try to push it as far back because they want to be able to get as much information as they can. But I think by them trying to get more of a fair trial, I think that they do that, like move the location, it'd be better just to finally get the case to get heard sooner.
I don't think it will. Moving the case somewhere else is going to make it longer. In fact, it's moving or change of venue has never sped up the process in anything.
Yeah, well, I know, but you never know. Like over here, they're trying to push it back because of the school, and they want to interfere with the school. And I think if they push it back to another bigger jurisdiction with more, bigger like courthouse and more, I guess not as surrounded by a college, that they'd be able to have the court hearing sooner than later. Because if they can't get it done by next summer, they're gonna want to push it back another summer.
Yeah, I understand that. I get that, and I think that's probably going to be the defense's game plan, right? They want to get it changed. They want this to go as long as possible. This is the bus theory, where they hope that one of the persons that's going to be a witness to him gets hit by a bus, because that's the only thing that's going to go on, is either something happens to one of the victims, things like that. And that's one of the main reasons you're going to want to stall. I mean, let's just say you're right, Blue, and let's just say that it comes down to, May 2025, and they're like, hey, we want to move it back. And the prosecution's like, all right, 2026. It's just going back further and further. These aren't actions typically done by somebody who's innocent. You know what I mean? But let me go through this.
Sorry, my mouse was taking forever to unclick. Yeah, I think it's crazy that if they really think their client is not guilty, I don't know why they're trying to push back the court case so far behind and keep him behind bars for such a long time if he's not guilty.
Yeah. I mean, he was so quick to want to be exonerated, right? He was willing to, he actually waived his extradition rights so he can get to Latah County faster. As soon as he saw that probable cause, everything seemed to pause, right? And that's kind of like everything else. He was quick to say he was going to get exonerated, and then he sees the probable cause affidavit, and he can't even say he's innocent when it comes down time to plead. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably at first didn't know that sheep was there, and he thought he was going to get away with it.
Hey, Blue, Swamp Rose is asking, isn't it weird how people like Bree and Cassie interpret Bryan versus the anonymous people? So she had a show on earlier, and she was talking, remember when we had that interview with Bree, and she was talking about Bryan Kohberger, and I don't remember how much information had been out at that point yet.
Yeah.
Right. And then there was Cassie, who was part of the Idaho Massacre podcast, I believe. And we covered what she was saying. And they both had somewhat of a different perspective than what some of the other people have. Do you think that that's weird or different or odd when you find out that there's a lot of other people, and significantly more people that have come out, that have stated that he was maybe a little bit different? There was, and there's also the stuff that really did happen that has been proven. He did get fired from WSU for a reason. He did get forced to be resigned from his security job for a reason. It wasn't just because his name is Bryan Kohberger. So what do you think, Blue? What do you think about that? Then I'll give you my opinion on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I guess it's just their opinion of what they saw and what they felt. But it's continuing, I guess, explanation of him. Like even when it first came out, the roommate talked about him going to the pool party, and he was kind of acting a little weird there too. He wasn't too social. And then you read what we read through the past and heard from his friends that he was, not too social. I mean, he would go to parties, but he wasn't like the valedictorian when he was in high school. He wasn't, one of the top football players. He was more of a, I guess, antisocial group. So,
right. And Swamp Rose goes, what about the girls in the bikini? Well, Howard Bloom did talk to those girls in the bikinis. He spoke directly to them, and they directly told him he never called them. In fact, they had a series of hang up phone calls that happened after the fact that haven't happened since his arrest. So, I mean, I get it. I know some people want him to be, innocent for whatever reason. I get it. But when it comes down to like, what are the interpretation of two people versus so many others? There was a lot of people that Aaron Hernandez tricked too. He was a professional NFL player for the New England Patriots, and on the side was capping, well, ex-players, thugs, everything that he was part of. He had everything. He had millions of dollars. He had just gotten a contract extension. I believe he had a Super Bowl ring. He was a multi-millionaire, had everything going for him. Just like Cassie said in the Massacre podcast, that Bryan Kohberger had everything going for him. So did Aaron Hernandez. So did Ted Bundy. Just because, if I was in their situation, or if you were in their situation, you wouldn't do the things that they're doing. You also have to realize that some of these people they're not wired the same way. They're not wired right. I mean, if somebody's going to go out there and commit a murder of any kind, especially, let's be honest, if they made it somewhere, whether it was the NFL or about to be a PhD criminologist, something's not wired right. And then when you listen to the issues that Bryan Kohberger has had throughout his entire life, and including the self-reported ones where he lost the sense of remorse or feelings, or maybe he never had it, but he feels like he's an organic sack of meat, and that's how he perceives everybody. There's some context that goes along with some of the things that are going on out there. Just because two people, thought he was an okay guy doesn't mean he was an okay guy, to everybody. In my opinion, what I can probably deduce is he bullied his friends and certain people, right? Not so much others. It's probably a confidence thing. He probably saw himself above certain people, and those people he bullied. But when it came down to being, around people of a certain status or whatever it may be, probably cowered to them and wasn't, an asshole to them. You know what I'm saying, Blue?
Yeah, no, I get it. It's like I would say, like in class, he probably had a sense of seniority, and he was trying to just probably been the first chance in a while that he's had that seniority. Yeah, and some people would let it go to their head sometimes, man.
For sure. And the top of max, or whatever it's called, the 15 when he said that, true. But I have this saying, right, where I say, everybody in the Border Patrol speaks Spanish, but not everybody that speaks Spanish is in the Border Patrol. And so the reference would be people who have these feelings, of lack of remorse or those type of things usually come with serial killers. Not everybody that has those feelings are a serial killer, but those that are serial killers usually do have those feelings. And so that's another thing to add on top of his DNA inside the house, the white car outside without the front license plate, his phone being off during a specific time of the night. I mean, once you start to pound up all those things, and we haven't even talked about the Dickies receipt or the tag that they found, that we know that they found, because that was in the search warrants. There's been rumored that they found the knife receipt. So once you add all those other things too that we haven't even heard of, it's going to make whatever you're holding there very heavy. And it's going to be very unlikely that somebody's going to be able to carry that much of a load and explain all those pieces of evidence. I don't think so. So let's go through this. Let's talk about the abbreviated factual background. It says media coverage in the case that later became State versus Bryan Kohberger began in the early afternoon of November 13, 2022, when news broke of 4 homicides in Latah County, Idaho. Extensive media coverage ensued for 6 weeks. So apparently, if there's some sort of huge crime that occurs, defense attorneys obviously don't want the news media to report on it, don't talk about it, because if that person becomes, a suspect and gets arrested, and they end up becoming a client of said defense attorney, it's going to make their job harder. because police and media were out there day one trying to alert people of the possibility of danger. Wow.
That's pretty crazy.
It gets worse, man. It gets worse. Like I said, this is totally like a communist type of thing. Like, oh, you do what we say, you think what we tell you to think, and you watch and hear what we tell you to watch and hear. Man, I'm American. I watch and hear and have my own opinion on everything. If you have a problem with it, the door's there. Don't let the good Lord hit you with a don't let the door hit you with the good Lord split you. So let's keep going though. All right. Daily updates were available from Moscow Police Department, often participating in the updates or the press releases was the Latah County prosecutor and the chief of police, James Fry. These broadcasts played on televisions, news stations, as well as print and digital media. Social media covered the investigation with MPD updating its Facebook page and providing press releases and media statements regularly. Exhibit A, MPD press releases. So it actually goes into what Exhibit A is, and it is every single press release that had came out on the Moscow Police Department website, including the stock image of the white Elantra. So when everybody's asking like, hey, why did they put a stock image for the white Elantra and not his? Well, apparently they were trying not to, make it look worse for Bryan Kohberger, because had they put his actual car out there, that would be biased against him, apparently. You know what I'm saying, Blue?
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy how that only biased when they do it there, but they can do it all over the rest of the states to try to find the criminal.
Yeah. They don't even want police utilizing the public in an attempt to locate or gather information of a potential dangerous subject, because once that dangerous subject is apprehended, that information that was put out there is detrimental to the case that they're trying to build against, for their client. Dude, please.
Told you, man, they're trying to pull all the rabbits out of the hats. They're trying to, every trick in the book, they're trying to get it done, man. Just because they're worried that they don't have a good case.
Yeah. Swamp Rose goes, thank you for reading my comments for 199. Thank you so much for commenting. It's some interesting things that you're saying, and I understand where you're coming from. I just don't see, like, what's the word I'm looking for? It just, to me, when I hear somebody saying, oh, there's two people that thought Bryan Kohberger was a different way, or, he was 15 when he mentioned those things, or any of those type of things, it just kind of comes off a little bit like, I don't know, trying to, I don't know, talk me into thinking he's innocent. I'm not sure if those are trying to talk me into it or talking themselves, but, and I'm not saying you, I'm talking about some of my comments, and they've got me a little bit fiery tonight. I'll be honest with you. All right, so let's go. It says, after the story in the local newspapers, news station, media focus did not stop with locally targeted news stations or newspapers. It extended to magazines, books, crime TV shows, and current medium of information and opinion sharing, the internet. Immediately and consistently, the internet was abuzz with podcasts, tweets, Facebook groups, Reddit, YouTube, and TikTok postings. So anybody that was talking about the case has potentially, tampered the jury, so to speak. We tampered the jury, yet that those questions that were brought out there by the defense team to the citizens of Latah County had no tampering at all with that jury pool, with some of the things that they were saying. I mean, it's one thing to hear it from a guy on YouTube like myself, and another thing to get an official document that says, did you hear Bryan Kohberger did this? Wouldn't you agree, Blue?
Yeah, man. I don't get, it's like, I just wonder, they're like backpedaling, like, oh man, what do we get ourselves into? Let's blame everybody else but ourselves. It's everybody else's fault that we lost this case from the beginning.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like they're trying to do, they're blaming everybody else for.
Yeah. Everybody's wrong, man.
Trying
Everybody's
to
wrong.
the police find the quadruple murder.
Yeah. And there's still, there's some that are still looking for the real killer out there, Big Blue, who hasn't struck since. All right, let's continue. It says, once the police arrested Kohberger, the public was ready to and has proceeded to vilify him without regard to the constitutional guarantee of the presumption of innocence and a right to an impartial jury or fair trial. Now, I believe he has the right for the presumption of innocence, but there's a difference between the presumption of innocence and being innocent. The presumption of innocence affords you to not be punished to the full extent of the law. So in this situation here, he would not be put to death until he's found guilty. That is the presumption of innocence. If there was no presumption of innocence in this situation, he would have already been put to death. So, that's one thing. And second of all, there are a few, if not a lot, especially those, some podcasts who are pro-burgers. I'll just be straight. I mean, I can count probably about 10 off the top of my head. I'm not going to, but I can. And these individuals push out a lot of stuff, including attacks to the victim's family members. I don't understand where attacking, Steve or his family or anybody that are victims, victims' family members. Like, that is despicable and beyond disgraceful. You have no idea what that man is going through or his family are going through, and you don't want to be in that situation. So to take everything that he says, especially early on when he was talking out of emotion, his daughter had just died and the killer was out on the loose for much of his live interviews, and you expect him to be cool, calm, composure, and everything to come out of his mouth to be 100% accurate, then you have no idea. I mean, you might be a loss of feelings just as bad as Bryan Kohberger is if you believe that somebody is callous enough to complete that, do that task. Yeah, that's a different level of despicable when somebody starts to attack the victim's family members. I don't like it. It reminds me of those individuals when a soldier comes back from, paying the ultimate sacrifice, right? They've lost their life in battle. And you have these protesters protesting at his funeral. Now, I understand that you're protesting the war. You shouldn't have gone, whatever the case may have been. You can protest those things elsewhere. But to go to the man or the woman's funeral where his family are grieving and mourning the death of their loved one, this is exactly what some of these people sound and feel like when they start to attack the victims. What do you think, Blue?
Yeah, man, that to me right there wouldn't sit well with me. It doesn't sit well with me that they, are attacking the victims' families because they just want justice for their family. I said it time and time again, it's crazy how in this world that's what we always end up doing.
Yeah.
We always end up, it's a lot of cases that we've gone through where, we prejudge the situations. I mean, I said something a couple of weeks ago. I was like, man, I probably shouldn't have said that, or the case of the little girl in Houston when they got killed by the illegal immigrant.
Yeah.
I was like, where was the mom? She was out in the middle of the night. And I was like,
I don't think that's true.
It was at 12 a.m.
I don't know where the mom was. I thought the mom was at the house.
Yeah.
I heard she snuck out to go to the gas station.
Yeah.
And at the gas station, she was picked up by some illegals and they took her down
underneath
the bridge.
And I said that. That's why I was like, man, I shouldn't have said that because I don't know the whole situation. Which, it happens.
Yeah. And I mean, people will blame that mother and not knowing the pain that she must be going through. Understandably, if she was out there partying or doing something like that or drugged up and her kid walked out in that scenario, yeah, I get it. But, when I was a teenager, I snuck out of my parents' house. And if something would have happened to me, I would have hated the fact that my parents would have been to blame or been the cause of blame or anything for the action that I took to sneak out of the house. You know what I mean? It's not right.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely.
So I'm going to skip down a little bit. I have some of these pages documented, so we have a few of them. This one goes down to page 11. Change of venue is necessary and appropriate pursuant to statute of rule. I'm going to see what did I put here. So right here, this is what I wanted. Ada County is the largest county in Idaho with more than 10 times as many potential jurors as Utah County. Given the familiarity with the case throughout the entire state of Idaho, selecting an impartial juror as guaranteed by the Constitution will be challenging. The best chance to find an impartial juror is to have the largest potential pool of candidates. So basically, they want to move it to Boise. And, at first, I wasn't opposed to it. I really wasn't opposed to the change of venue. I was like, if Bryan Kohberger is guilty in Moscow, Idaho, he's going to be guilty in Boise. He'll be guilty in San Antonio. He'll be guilty anywhere, right? But as the defense has stalled and refused to give alibis and refused to do, hand over what they were supposed to hand over. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, the prosecution didn't hand over things." That's not true. Prosecution handed over every important piece of information. There were certain, cameras that they were inquiring about that weren't used in the investigation, and they were not hidden from her. In fact, she knew exactly where they were. They were in the thumb drive at the police station. But she was arguing, "You're going to order me to do it? I'll do it if you order me." And yeah, lady, do your job. Go look through it. Why are you going to force everybody else to do your job? So
that's the way people do these days, man. They want everything handed to them on a silver platter.
I agree. But at the same time, you can't go in there and say they're withholding evidence. And at the same token, they're handing it to you and you just don't want to look through it. You know what I'm saying? That's bull crap. So, there's that. There's also the fact that they were looking for those GPS locations, right? And I, for one, think that, Bill Thompson, and this is just my opinion and my theory and my thoughts, probably went up to, was it Detective Morey, and said, we need to get those points over to the order of defense. They hadn't given us his alibi. We kind of want that first. So, make sure you get that to us in a timely manner. Kind of give him a little wink and a nod to take your time. You know what I'm saying? So that they can get the alibi, because the alibi was supposed to come first, right? So,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing they were holding off forever. It was not the best one out there either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is the conclusion of this part. It says, this is no ordinary case. Bryan Kohberger is accused of killing 4 individuals. The state seeks the death penalty if the trial should result in a conviction. As such, Mr. Kohberger's constitutional right must be carefully guarded. Rarely does even a small community come together in both number and quality of unity as has happened here. And that's not the case, though. There's been a lot of issues that has happened, and it's been well documented between the small community and, law enforcement. The Church of Christ individuals, the Stickergate stuff. They don't trust the police department there in Moscow. So, them saying, "Oh, it's just, they've come unified." Well, maybe they come unified because your client is guilty of sin, for one, and the evidence is obvious. Maybe even those that don't trust law enforcement and that small community probably say, "Yeah, we don't trust these guys, but this dude obviously did this." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they'll just have to listen to the evidence like everybody else and go from there.
When was the last time, or here recently, I saw 2 groups of people who usually don't agree come together and agree? The last time I saw this happen?
Been a while.
No, it just happened the other day when the Democrats and the Republicans both agreed that the Secret Service director should resign. So
that is true.
And that was because of a complete failure in an obvious situation. If every side is agreeing in this town, it's probably because it's the same situation. Bryan Kohberger is the Secret Service director of the situation where it's obvious. The evidence is all there. There was a complete failure. And I mean, it might be a bad example, but if everybody is assuming that usually don't side with each other, they come together on one opinion, it's probably because it's obvious. All right. So these are the press releases that I wanted to show you guys. And And this was Exhibit A, and this was supposedly why it's so damning against Bryan Kohberger. The information in here is damning, though nothing in here in any of these up until Bryan Kohberger's arrest say Bryan Kohberger's name. So I don't understand how it's damning to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get it.
And again, the fact that Moscow Police Department, let's pull it up. Let me I gotta scroll down pretty far because it's all of them.
Yeah, they say those are all their symbols on their papers.
Yeah, they put the stock image, and they included the 2 stock images separate in this document, meaning that these 2 stock images somehow are detrimental to Bryan Kohberger's defense case.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably they do have to admit they have admit that they changed the year because they had a better understanding what the year was after they had more reviews of the videos. So
who gives a shit what they thought? That's the thing, though, Blue. Like, who cares what they thought 2 years ago? Today, do you have an expert on the defensive side that can say that it is not a 2015 Elantra? If you don't, I don't care what they thought it was. They could have thought it was a flying car for all I care. It doesn't matter. Who gives a shit what they thought it was then or the first week? What do you think it is now? And can you prove that it's not that or that it is that? Because from all accounts, it sounds like the experts can say that they can't exclude a 2015 Elantra. Now, can Bryan Kohberger's defense team exclude a 2015 Elantra?
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot more video footage than we do, so we don't know what exactly it's on those videos, and they probably have a better picture of it too.
Yeah, they probably do, and I'm not, like I said, I call things straight. I'm not gonna fall on one way or the other. Obviously, it seems like I'm biased one way because the evidence is so damn strong. You know what I mean? But the fact that they didn't know what it was, obviously, as far as the car was, and they had to go back and figure out it was a 2014 to 16, tells me that they had no idea or no earthly idea that the vehicle came from Pullman. Zero. Until they got his name, and then they started looking at the traffic cams in Pullman. Maybe perhaps they looked at the traffic cams in Pullman, but because they were looking for a specific time frame, right? 20 minutes, 30 minutes after the murder, if somebody committed that crime and was heading towards Pullman, they would have driven into Pullman at that time. That's one of the reasons why Bryan Kohberger more than likely drove an hour out of his way to get back into Pullman. Right. So once they got that video of that, and they got his phone activity, and they knew where he was prior to 2:47 a.m., and they saw him, and they could corroborate his movement on his phone with the traffic cams that were in the area up until the point where he turns his phone off. And then when he's driving back through with his phone on, they can corroborate his location and its accuracy on those occasions because they have the video. But for some reason, where the video isn't that, according to the defense team, that's when it becomes inaccurate. When there's video, it's obviously you can't argue with it. It's accurate, but as soon as that recording stops, boom, it's all over the place. The pings go everywhere, right? It's so stupid. All right, so let's continue this. Do you have any thoughts or questions, Blue?
No thoughts. So I think from the information that we've had, those cars are not too different. Like most cars don't change that much within those couple year spans. Some might, but it would be pulled off the market for a while and then be brought back.
Yeah. Maybe. See, and I'm already at page 140, and this is going to go on until 154. So a lot of these 319 pages really isn't all that. You know what I mean? It's a lot less. So this is the declaration of Bryan Edelman, PhD. I, Bryan Edelman, solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm as follows. I am the co-founder of Trial Innovations, Inc., a national full-service jury research firm. So I guess this is the guy that was up earlier talking about how how there's a tainted jury because of the press releases and everything that's gone on. So I'm going to try to just kind of skim through this, and get to the actual part that pertains information. So it says, in the state of Idaho versus Bryan Kohberger, the research and evaluate, blah, blah, blah. All right, here it goes. It is my opinion that the residents in Latah County have been exposed to extensive prejudicial, pre-trial publicity and social media surrounding the murders of Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin. And the coverage of Bryan Kohberger has included interviews with former friends and students and old posts from his social media accounts dating back years. Yeah, because it's public information, dude. Like why can we not look at that? Right? Like if he had something out there on a public site, it's public information, freedom of speech, man, freedom of news, freedom of coverage. You know, there is a Bill of Rights and constitutional rights for a reason, not just Bryan Kohberger's. Yeah, he has a right to a free trial, but we all as an individuals also have a right for press, media, and news. So, yeah. All right. This publicity painted a picture of disturbed individual capable of committing violence. Well, obviously, whoever committed this was a disturbed individual. Do you think that the person that committed this would not be a disturbed individual, Blue?
I mean, there's some people that can hide it, but to actually commit the crime, yeah, they're pretty disturbed, man.
Exactly. The media also saturated the jury pool with potential trial evidence and details, some of which provided to be false or misleading. That created a presumption of guilt. Well, it wasn't that. I think it was actually the real evidence that may have created the presumption of guilt. As soon as, and I'll be honest, when the probable cause came out, I really didn't like the way it was formatted and read. I had to read that sucker a few times before I finally started to understand what they were trying to say. But once I grasped what they were trying to say and I put it all together and maybe even put it a little bit better in chronological order, I was able to see it's obvious who did this. All right. So the pretrial publicity is with reference to the GPS phone data from the defendant's phone. So the fact that he had his phone off during the time of the crime. So they're admitting that that's part of the evidence. Video footage of the alleged getaway vehicle reported to be his make and model. So because it was reported to be a Hyundai Elantra, they're pissed. This is insane, dude. Evidence left by the killer at the crime scene. So they're admitting that the evidence there was left by the killer and just so happened to be Bryan Kohberger's DNA on top of said evidence. The DNA results, the erroneous connections to the victims. So there's the lie. Remember, they said saturated the jury pool with pretrial evidence and details, right? So that means that there was some real stuff there, but some of which to be misleading. Now, we already know what they claim was the misleading part. And it's at the end, erroneous connections to the victims. Wow. So all the other stuff, this tells me all the other stuff is true. It's real. That includes his GPS data stuff. Because remember,
yeah,
Ann Taylor, when she first talked about Cy-Ray, she said that they had a witness that was going to testify that Bryan Kohberger couldn't be the vehicle there on is it Pullman Highway heading into Moscow, captured by the Floyd cannabis dispensary camera. He was supposed to testify to that. Big Blue, when he testified, did you hear anything about that?
No.
You know what I did hear? That he had just gotten some evidence in from the prosecution, including some location pings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And now they no longer wanted to argue that. So what does that tell you, Blue? That they had a thought that this was the avenue that he was going to say. The prosecution provides evidence and they no longer go that route. What does that mean?
That means that they can't BS their way around it, man. They're trying to say if he couldn't bring up the evidence, then they would go that route. But since he has evidence, they had to backpedal and do something else.
Yeah.
Because he was lying.
Yeah. And he also said that he has the right to change his mind. And also, I've never heard an expert witness say that on the defense, on the stand for either way. prosecution or defense. I've never heard a witness say, you know, I have the right to change my mind if I get all the information, because once I get all the information, it could be very bad for Kohberger. And then what was the information that he was missing? He was missing the drive time information, or the test information from Pullman to Moscow, and how his phone would have acted in between those areas, even though Bryan Kohberger's phone wasn't connected to the towers when he was driving from Pullman to Moscow. So there's nothing to compare it to. And that there was no drive time from or data also from inside the house with a cell phone, and how the cell phone acted inside the house. Even though nowhere does the prosecution ever say that Bryan Kohberger had his phone on inside the house. And there's nothing saying that since there's nothing saying that he had his phone on in the house, even if they were to go do these tests, you know, between Pullman and Moscow, and then from inside the house to, you know, Genesee or whatever, what are they going to compare it to? What are they going to say? All right, we have this. Let's see if this is, oh shit, Bryan Kohberger's phone is off. What are you going to compare it to? So why do you even do the test? You know, that's like saying, you know, I mean, I don't even know. It's so bad. You know, it's like if somebody gets, you know, stabbed to death in the chest, and then you're trying to check for gunshot residue on his chest. Doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? So, all right. So let's continue this. All right. So it says much of this information came directly from the probable cause affidavit. So the probable cause affidavit is public record. So regardless of anybody picked it up or not, everybody had a right to see it, and anybody could have seen it. And this is not the first probable cause affidavit to ever be released. So none of the stuff that has been put out there has ever, you know, it's not something new. You know what I'm saying? None of the stuff that Moscow Police Department did was like, oh, you know what? I can't believe they released his confession or his statement or videos or any of those type of things before the trial. None of that has happened. In fact, I've seen a lot of people complaining, oh man, if they had all this evidence, why didn't they show it? Well, because they got to get to court, right? So I don't get it, man. So Thompson, during the December 30th, 2020 televised news conference, with the media in attendance, Mr. Thompson encouraged them to share the true facts with your readers, the watchers and listeners, to all the people who were interested and really wanted to know what was going on. So I think there's some context to this. Do you remember what was going on before Bryan Kohberger's arrest? Everybody was getting blamed. The neighbor, some TikTok lady ended up getting sued because she was blaming one of the professors from the University of Idaho. A bunch of you know, stuff that was just everybody being blamed, and there was all this misinformation everywhere. And so the purpose for him to say this was because, hey, let's stop all that misinformation. Let's stop chasing Jack Showalter, or any of these guys that everybody's been bothering. Big G or whatever his name was that was out there at the grub truck. I mean, everybody was a suspect. Adam Lauda, everybody, and yet, you know, there was all this misinformation that was going on about that. Real misinformation. And so that's what that was about, in my opinion. All right. So it talks about how the killing sent shockwaves to the local community and generated a widespread panic during the 6-week search for the killer. So because they couldn't find him during that 6 weeks, they should move the trial because it's somehow detrimental to Bryan Kohberger.
Nah, man, just
that's stupid. So let's continue. It says, I'm gonna because they finally put an example. So with investigators reluctant to share information before making an arrest, rumors and misinformation proliferated via informal communication channels and social media about the crime. Victims were bound and gagged. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is why Chief Fry wanted the real information out there. Right? They gagged, and the killer called 911. And the killer, it was the driver who took the victims home. The roommates were involved. Kohberger had killed before. So Kohberger had killed before wasn't coming out during the 6 weeks that they were searching for a killer. So that's bull crap right there too. All right. So during this time, it was reported that the detectives received 2,645 email tips, 2,770 phone tips, 1,084 digital media submissions from the public. Residents remain on high alert and fear that the killer could strike again. Many students went home for Thanksgiving break early and did not return. On December 10th, University of Idaho spokesman Jody Walker told the media that an estimated 25 to 40% of the students had not yet returned to campus. So because they were in fear and didn't want to come back, and people knew about this crime, it's detrimental to Bryan Kohberger. It's stupid. One of the victims' sisters encouraged students to go home rather than risk their lives. To the students at the University of Idaho that are still staying around campus, leave. Your grades are severely less important in your lives. Police Chief Fry tried to reassure the public that everyone was safe, and the University of Idaho drastically increased campus security. Interesting. So there was can't do vigils. Moscow community joined together to support the victims and families. A candlelight vigil was held on campus. Thousands of stickers were handed out. That's detrimental to their client. You can't do vigils. So the next time somebody commits a murder, you can't talk about the murder. You can't ask for assistance from the public. You know, if you're looking for a specific type of vehicle, you cannot ask or put that out there. You cannot do vigils. You cannot have ceremonies, or you can't make a monument for anything, because that will somehow be detrimental to the case for the defense's client.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay. All right. I mean, like I said, maybe yeah, they should walk in with the communist flag or something next time they go to trial. The Healing Garden was inspired by the murders and created to memorize all the students who had died. While attending the university, the King Road home where the victims lived and was demolished based on the request from the student body. We heard from the students in the area that they were ready for the house to come down. However, the decision was met with criticism and fomented another round of speculation and misinformation. Majority of it in favor of Bryan Kohberger. A lot of people were saying that, they were knocking it down because they were hiding things. There was other evidence. Bryan Kohberger's innocent. Why would they knock it down if they weren't trying to hide something? So yeah, all that misinformation was on the Kohberger side when it came to the knocking down of the house. Now, I don't agree with the house being knocked down. I thought it should have stayed up. However, when you kind of realize the condition of the house, and especially in the interior, walls, stairs, floors were removed, it would have been a safety hazard to have anybody inside there. You couldn't even walk to the upstairs room because Bryan Kohberger had walked up and down those stairs, and all those stairs had been taken as evidence after, once it was processed from the top down. And after it was completed, and any time that, if it was still up today, it would be that way. It would be missing the staircase, missing the floors, missing the walls. The acoustics wouldn't have been the same because walls were missing, floors are missing. Furniture is missing. It's one thing if this incident had occurred outside and you can kind of take a look at the landscape, see how far things are, how noise travels in that area, because it's unchanged. That's not the case for the Idaho house. It was 100% changed inside by the time they knocked it down. What were we going to say, Blue?
No, I already forgot.
Yeah. So, all right, let's go. It says a community attitude survey was conducted to assess the impact of the media coverage on Latah County jury pool. Approximately 98% of the survey respondents were familiar with the case. In addition, community members have more than just passing familiarity with this crime. Approximately 68% of the survey's respondents reported that they have followed the case somewhat or very closely, with 29% falling into the latter category. In addition, 79% of the survey respondents recognized at least 5 of the 9 items tested in the survey, and 52% knew 7 or more. 81% of those familiar with the case had read, seen, or heard the police found the knife sheath on the bed next to one of the victims, and 67% were aware that DNA was found on the sheath was matched to Bryan Kohberger. Those things aren't going to change in trial, man. DNA was found on the sheath. Thing was found actually underneath the body of a victim. In addition, 86% of Latah County survey respondents heard that the defendant owned the same type of car recorded on the video driving around the neighborhood where the killings occurred. 79% knew that the cell phone tower data purportedly showed that the Kohberger made several trips near the victim's home months before the killings. It's in the probable cause affidavit that is public record. All of that is public record in the probable cause affidavit. These findings are particularly concerning given that they're all media items. No, they're not, sir. These were not all media items. This was in the probable cause affidavit. In the probable cause affidavit, it spoke about the knife, it spoke about the DNA, it spoke about the phone, it spoke about the car. So this is bull crap right here. It goes, which came from the probable cause affidavit mentioned during the 30th print. So he's even saying which comes from the probable cause, but at the same time, the probable cause affidavit is public record. Like, I don't know, man. This is just stupid. We're significantly related prejudgment. For example, 72% of Lake Talk County prospective jurors who knew that the police found the sheath, and 75% of those heard that the DNA matched to believe Kohberger's is guilty of murder. It's quite a bit of percentage. You know, I know a lot of people that are pro-Burger say, you know, nobody believes he's guilty or anything. That's not necessarily true. Maybe perhaps you're in the minority when it comes to thinking he's innocent. But those that are like-minded usually hang out with like-minded folks, right? So I'm a Steelers fan. Sometimes I hang out with other people. But when I go to Pittsburgh and I watch a game, I'm around a bunch of Steelers fans. We all have the same likes. We all agree that our team's better than the next, you know, regardless of anything, because we're all like-minded people and we're all going to have the same points and the same thoughts and theories. You know, same thing here. So all these findings put the defendant in a distinct disadvantage at the start of trial. Well, the thing is, those things are going to come out in trial. So what is it going to do anyways? It's going to put him at a distinct disadvantage then too. When it comes out in trial that Bryan Kohberger's DNA was on the knife sheath, that his phone was off during the murders, that his vehicle or a vehicle very similar to his was seen outside of the house, and that when his vehicle leaves that area and is no longer seen in Moscow, it is then boom, pops up, turns the phone on, heads towards Pullman. I mean, if you can't connect these dots, it's funny. You know, I had somebody, it was in my live chat, say that Bryan Kohberger hasn't been found guilty. And I said, yeah, I get it. But if you walk outside, you know, after sleeping all night, and you walk outside and there's water on the ground and there's dark skies moving away from you, do you really need to be a meteorologist to know that it rained? So, yeah. All right. So you don't really need to have you don't need to have everything in this situation, in my opinion, to know who did this. That's just what it is. All right. Many of the incriminating details widely reported in the media are in dispute, including the claim that Kohberger's vehicle was placed near the crime scene by the video footage and cell tower data. The cell tower data doesn't put Bryan Kohberger near the crime scene at the time of the murders. His phone turned off in Pullman, then turned on south of Moscow. So that's also a lie. However, the burden of proof has shifted to the defendant, who must change jurors' pre-existing opinions regarding the evidence against Kohberger, developed from exposure to biased media coverage. I don't really see anything being biased, man, when all this information that's coming out and, you know, things that they're talking about the probable cause affidavit, but oh well. All right. The size of the venue is another important factor to consider. Sensational crimes are more likely to have a longer lasting impact on the public consciousness in smaller counties than in larger ones where violent crimes are more common. You know what they're trying to say, right? You know? What do you say here?
Sorry, I just keep you on here like 10 seconds. My bad. I think they're trying to say that there's more violent crime in bigger cities, that they're trying to say.
Right, and that they're less sensitive to the fact that, you know, a crime like this has occurred. They're desensitized, and maybe perhaps that'll fall into his favor because of the nature of the crime.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it does, like in bigger cities, it does pass your, I would say, your thought memory saving process more, because it happens more and more every day. I mean, if somebody got shot and killed back home, like in Del Rio, they'll talk about it for weeks. But here, somebody gets shot almost every night, and I don't even know about it because I don't pay attention to the news. But
Yeah.
I don't know. So if I go to Walmart and somebody be like, "Hey, you know this person? Yeah, he got shot or something," they would tell you over there. But here, nobody really knows anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. So listen to this, but it says several rumors have proliferated in Layton County. For example, survey respondents reported that Kohberger had a bad history with women, was responsible for other murders in Pennsylvania and Washington, bragged about committing the perfect murder, was acting strange after the murders. Others reported that he was obsessed with one of the victims, had dated her, tracked her locations at all times, and had been in the house in the past. Survey responders also mentioned that rumors about drugs, other suspects involved, and online businesses that was sexual in nature and parties at the victim's house. See, not all of those things were derogatory or negative towards Bryan Kohberger. You know, other suspects, drugs, sexual nature, online business, OnlyFans is what they're referring to.
There was a few, but not everything was towards him. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so it's kind of going towards him, for him. I don't see how it's, if you have stuff that's being said that's, possibly true or false, that's for him and against him. I mean, it should equal itself out, right? Balance itself out. Let's just get this damn show on the road and see what they have. If he's innocent, let's put it up there. I mean, at the end of the day, if he can prove that he was somewhere else, like everybody, like a few, let's say everybody, like a few people think that he's going to be able to do, bring it out. Why do you want to wait so long? Why not go to a bail hearing? Say, hey, this is what we got. He wasn't there. We are demanding bail until trial. That's not happening either. So the survey data shows that the media coverage has shifted the burden of proof to the defendant. I don't think that's true. Layton County prospective jurors exposed to prejudicial media coverage hold presumption of guilt. Approximately 67% of the survey respondents that knew about the case reported that Bryan Kohberger is guilty of murder, with 25% indicating that he is definitely guilty. So, I mean, you have 75% that aren't definitely saying that he's guilty. They want to wait for more evidence and want to see what happens. And, out of that 67, or, from that 67, the minus of the 25, what is that? Like 42, the 42 that are 42% out of that 67 are probably saying, yeah, I think he did it. I don't want to see all the evidence. You know what I'm saying? I don't think this is bad numbers. I mean, I would assume that it'd be pretty close to be more than 50-50, when it comes to the thought of anybody arrested from police department as far as their guilt. Usually people don't get arrested just for nothing. There's got to be some evidence and some stuff. Now, it doesn't mean that they're automatically guilty, but when somebody does get arrested, the thought is, they probably more than likely committed the crime. Now, once you go in and start looking at things and whatever the case may be, and you poke holes into the prosecution's case or whatever, but 67%, not even just 25% say, yeah, he's guilty of sin. That's not a lot. So the presumption of guilt increases to 81% for those who recognize 7 or more media items. Well, those that recognize 7 or more media items aren't going to be selected for the jury. You're going to ask questions. You're not going into this blind. You're not picking out names from a hat and saying, all right, you're going to be on the trial. You're going to be on the trial. You're going to be on the trial. No, you ask questions. You look into people. You do investigations. Make sure that the persons that you're trying to pick for jury, in fact, they give you 2 weeks for jury selection just for that, so that you can figure out the best 12 jurors out of the entire county. You ask questions. They know some stuff, and you see one of them, and their online name is Drunk Turkey #1 fan, then you're probably going to find out that they're a little bit biased. But at the same time, I mean, you got to ask questions. You got to pick your jury. It's not just like names out of a hat. You agree with me, Blue?
Yeah, I mean, that's what they have. They bring in the jury. They bring in all the people that are not going to be in the jury, and they have to siphon through them and see who's going to be the best candidate for them. They'll cross-examine them to see what their beliefs are sometimes, or what they believe, like if they believe in the death penalty or not. Those are questions that they ask you.
Mm-hmm.
So all that benefits them. If somebody says, I believe in the death penalty, the prosecution probably wants them on the stand, but the defense doesn't. So, they fight back and forth to get, the 12, and they try to give each other a little bit of, a little bit of jury selection to each other, because it's honestly at the end, they go by morals a lot too.
Yeah. No, I hear you. So the rest of that stuff that I kind of just looked over was some of the stuff that he's done in his past, and worked in Reno and a bunch of other things. But let's go down to where it says, the nature of the pretrial publicity is an important factor to consider when weighing in the need for change of venue. And here are the factors to be considered. When Bill Thompson, he was asked the public to remain vigilant as the killer was still on the loose. That apparently was, what was the term that they use? Pretrial publicity. That is an important factor. Is that? Another one is that they say, we cannot say there is no threat to the community. As we have stated, please stay vigilant. Any report of suspicious activity or beware of your surroundings. Those things should not have been said during this because it was detrimental to the defense. Fry also addressed the frustrations from the public over the slow pace of information coming from his department since Sunday. Fry said police are looking in all evidence, including social media, for anyone who might have a connection to the case. So I'm assuming because he said this, people thought, oh man, there must be a connection to the case from social media. And so there's starts the rumor. This is stupid. Fry offered assurance that police are doing everything they can to let people in the community know that we care. We want them to feel safe. We want them to be safe. And we're going to do everything we can to do that. So is it by ensuring that they're going to catch the right guy and then them arresting somebody? Is their way of saying that it's detrimental to their client? Because that's what I'm gathering from all this bull crap. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, like any defense, they're going to want to try to get some stuff delayed or knocked back, or, they're going to try to get some of the evidence kicked out because they know it's going to be damning for their client.
Yeah, and I can go on and on and on about how stupid some of these things are. Just basically alerting the public that there's a concern. It's just stupid. Like all these things. I mean, after reading all this, I really do hope it gets denied, because it's just stupid. Everything in this thing is just, like I said, they want to control what you think, want to control what you say, want to control what you do. You know what? There's a song, north of Richmond, Richmond, north of Richmond. Kind of sounds a lot like this. They want to know what you do. They want to know what you say, want to control what you think, all 9 yards. I kind of feel like that here. Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to probably take a couple of questions from y'all, maybe do about 5 minutes, and then we're going to be calling the show. So if you have any questions, comments, or anything that you guys want me to answer, please put a couple of stars ahead of it. We will answer all the super chats for sure. So Angel asks, how many pages is it? 319. Yeah, it's 319, but like 100 and something were just the press releases. Some of it is like the background of who these people are. They go into their life details and certain stuff. And so it's just, yeah. Let's see. Personally, I think we want to be kind of all that, but there comes a time like when it's unnecessary. If you're a liar, folks should know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that was referencing to. Ice cream?
I don't know.
Ice cream? All right. I think he's where he's at because his mom and dad aren't pushing for anything. Where are his supporters, pocketbooks? Why does he have a court-ordered attorney? Well, I mean, and that's probably because he's indigent. You know, he probably don't come for money. But, you know, to answer your question as far as like, you know, where is his fan base or his parents and stuff like that? That's an interesting question. You know, I know they do live on the other side of the country. I do know that, or I've heard that there is some financial issues there. I think his sisters got fired and stuff like that. You know, to a certain extent, or to a lot of an extent, you know, his family members are also a victim. You know, not to the extent, obviously, as the persons who, you know, whose lives that he took. But you know, they're still victims in their own right. They didn't ask for this. This was blindsided. Their house was, you know, Michael Kohberger's house was broken into by police and stuff. So, did I do the statistics part? Yeah, we just talked about all the statistics. Yeah, the one that mattered was the fact that only 25% of people actually think he's definitively guilty. 67 think he is possibly guilty. That means that, you know, 42 of the 67%, 42% of that, or that 42% of people probably say, yeah, he probably did this, but I want to see all the evidence. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah,
you know, and for people to think that he's guilty based on the probable cause affidavit that's out there, I mean anybody can see that that's kind of the case. All right, so let's see. Why did they SWAT the Kohberger's house instead of arresting BK and interviewing him? Well, he's a quadruple murder suspect, and they want to get him off of the streets as fast as possible. And you don't have to interview anybody. You don't have to do it. Like, I don't understand where this thought process is that there's only one way to do things. Pick him up, talk to him, do this, do that. You only do that if you don't have enough evidence. If you have enough evidence, you just go pick his ass up. Yeah. You haul his ass in and you arrest his ass, just like they did.
Oh yeah, man. I think, you know, the parents are still going through a lot of stuff on both sides, so we'll see how it all plays out, man.
Yeah. Tanya goes, Daniel, it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck. It's a duck. He's a duck. Yeah, I agree.
Maybe it's a rat.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no biggie, Angel. You know, I know a lot of people, yeah, that's the first thing that they think is like, man, why didn't they interview him? Why didn't they ask him questions? He could have maybe come up with answers. I mean, that only happens if you don't have the evidence to prove he's guilty. That should tell you a lot. The fact that they didn't do that. The fact that they didn't bring him in and question him should tell you a lot. It should be screaming off the rooftops of how much information and evidence they have against them. Well, guys, I appreciate everybody tuning in. I know I didn't go through all 319 pages. We got to about 200, a little bit less than 200. I'll probably go through the rest of the 120 pages or so that are left. And if anything populates off that, we'll talk about it on Friday. I know myself and I are going to be here on Friday. I'm not sure Blue is.
No, not Friday. Yeah. I'm going out of town.
Yeah.
Saturday too.
Yeah. So I'll be back on Friday. And if anything comes out about this, we'll talk about that. Maybe we'll do a call-in show. It's probably what's going to be on the list because, you know, this stuff I'm doing at work right now has kind of got all my time to be digging into other things. So we might do that on Friday. If you're here still, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell. Let us know in the comment section what you think. Should Bryan Kohberger get a change of venue, or do you think, hey, man, you made this bed. It's time to lay in it. With that being said, Blue, you got any final words?
Y'all take care and have a good night. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, y'all have a good night. We'll see you next time.